everyone. Thank you all for joining us here today at Counts Brothers Music. I want to ask you all this time, if you don't mind, just to please silence your cell phone, any noisemakers, anything that beeps, unless you're an on-call doctor, then you're okay. But everyone else, if you don't mind, please turn them off. I just want to do a quick heads up before I begin welcoming our guests today. Next month, we are excited to have Randy Poe join us here for our Legends series on Wednesday, August 13th at 10:30 a.m. So go ahead and mark your calendars, and we'll have it on Facebook and Instagram, so stay tuned for that. All right. We are thrilled to host a special conversation today with three voices who each carry and contribute to the legacy of Southern music in their own respective way. Jerry Phillips is a lifelong musician and producer whose path through music has been shaped by a legacy unlike any other. As the son of Sam Phillips, founder of Sun Records, and the visionary behind artists like Johnny Cash, Elvis Presley, and Carl Perkins, Jerry was raised in the heart of Memphis's music revolution, but his story stands entirely on its own. As a member of his band Jesters, he recorded Cadillac Man, a standout track from the final years of the original Sun label. He then went on to produce records for Stax, and with his brother Knox, co-produced John Prine's Pink Cadillac, one of the most beloved and raw albums of Prine's career. And after decades of writing and recording, Jerry recently released his first solo album, For the Universe, recorded at Sam Phillips Recording. It's a collection that captures a lifetime of sound, soul, and storytelling, and it's truly worth the wait. Joining him today is his daughter, Halley Phillips.
Hey, wait a minute. You got a bigger home now? What you doing? Don't you people have homes? Gee whiz.
With over 2 decades of experience, Halley has built an impressive career as a record producer, songwriter, and music industry executive. Today, she serves as vice president of Big River Broadcasting, Knox Music Incorporated, High-Low Music Incorporated, and Sam Phillips Recording Service. Her contributions have earned her recognition as a 2-time Radio Wayne Award recipient, and she plays an active role in preserving music culture through her leadership as former vice president and current governor of the Memphis chapter of the Recording Academy.
Wow. Now, will you just go home, please?
That sounds pretty good this morning. This doesn't usually happen. Thanks, guys.
Helping today's discussion is Fletch Brown, operations manager and program director for WXFL-FM, and one of the most decorated voices in Southern radio. Fletch has been named Media Market Personality of the Year multiple times by the Alabama Broadcasters Association. Hosted Muscle Shoals to Music Row Live for 15 years and continues to be a passionate supporter of artists across the region. So, without further ado, let's get ready to rock on and join me in welcoming the legendary Jerry Phillips, Halley Phillips, and Fletch Brown.
Well, again, I'm Fletch, and many of you here know me and know me for years. I appreciate you guys being here today. I appreciate Counts Brothers asking me to moderate this for basically my bosses, so I have to make them look good. They both employ me every day, so it's kind of in my best interest to make them look good. I do want to say, though, just a little bit to preface this conversation that we're about to have, a little bit about myself, that I was born and raised early childhood in Ann Arbor, Michigan, not far from Detroit. So I grew up in the shadow of Detroit and Motown. For me, names like Berry Gordy, Quincy Jones, these were household names for me. My Elvis, Johnny Cash, and Jerry Lee Lewis were more like Michael Jackson, Diana Ross, Smokey Robinson. You get it. That was my childhood growing up. Somehow, the good Lord saw fit to drop me in the city that bore not one but 2 men, 50 years apart, who changed music forever and made possible everything that I grew up knowing and loving about music. So I just sort of landed right in this well of history and musical legacy. And I got the opportunity to work for Sam Phillips for 6 years before he passed away. One of the most interesting human beings I've ever met in my entire life. And they get to call him Dad and Grandpa. So I've had the opportunity over the years to talk with Sam a little bit about his history and career, and to hear the stories that Jerry has told about growing up and the impact that her grandfather had on her today. And so that's what we're hoping to kind of share with you all here. And at the end of this, we're going to kind of try to work in a couple of minutes to get some audience questions if you have any. But I'll have questions for the both of you, and I'll have questions that are directed individually to each of you. But I kind of want to start with you, Jerry. You were born in Memphis. Your father was born in Florence, Alabama. Talk to us in 23?
Me?
No, hey, your father. Oh, Sam.
I'm leaving. I've been disrespected here.
I know better than ask you when you were born.
Well,
He was born, what, early
23, yeah.
23, yeah. So talk to us a little bit about what you understood your father's childhood to be growing up that led him into his love of music and music creation.
Well, when talking about this stuff, it's like an octopus or something. It's like so many different, you could talk about it forever, but he was born, his father was a tenant farmer, had 200 acres of cotton, and he picked cotton alongside black cotton pickers, and he heard the sound of the actual blues. I mean, if you got a cotton bag on your sack on your back and you're out there all day long, the things you're going to sing are going to be about the blues pretty much, so he got exposed to that early on, and of course my mother was born in Sheffield, so I've been coming here for all my entire life, so I feel like as much a part of this area as Memphis. I think a lot of people identify me with Memphis, and I do live in Memphis, was born in Memphis, but yeah, I mean, he what he really wanted to do was, when he got into the music end of it, he wanted to give these people a chance. It was all black people, blues people, that he didn't think were going to have a chance, because radio and everything was segregated at that point. No white people were getting played on black radio stations, no black people getting played on white radio stations. So he just kind of felt like that he needed to do something about that, and so he met my mother. My mother was working at WLAY with her. Does anybody remember Earlene in Storyland? Does anybody? Okay. Well, that was my aunt. So you see what's wrong with me. She was great. She was a little bit out there, But her and my mother had a radio program on LAY. My mother sang like Doris Day, one of those kind of singers, and my aunt was a piano player, so they had a show there, and then one day my dad comes walking in and gets a job at LAY, and my mother looked at him, she said, she didn't tell him this, but she told me this later, she said, that's the man I'm going to marry, I know it's the man I'm going to marry, She said he came in out of the rain, and his hair was down on him, and all this stuff, that romantic World War II stuff, what I mean? The women are different then. I'm not going to offend anybody here, but their man can do no wrong. You know what I mean? You're not stealing my man. Are you kidding? What's wrong with you? He couldn't help himself. But yeah, I know I'll get off the track, Fletch. But
no, you're fine.
Yeah, I mean, he was influenced by working in the cotton fields and the kind of music he was hearing being sung there.
All right. Well, I'm glad you mentioned your mother, because Becky, I did know Becky early in my career at Big River. One of the sweetest women I've ever known. Every time she called, usually to talk to Halley, she always had 5 minutes to talk to me about me and my kids. Your mother was one of the sweetest women I've ever known, and we lost her a few years ago. What would you say? I mean, obviously Sam built Sam's legacy, but Becky was a part of that. I mean, more than just a wife. She was part of WHER in Memphis. What would you say was your mother's some of her greatest contributions to what Sam became?
Well, I'm skipping forward a little bit, but my dad went to work for WREC Radio in Hotel Peabody, and he had a radio show, and then he was also mixing the big bands that came through the Skyway. The Skyway is a really beautiful place upstairs, open and everything, and Glenn Miller and all those bands came through, and he was mixing that and feeding it to the radio networks, live. And so then he opened his studio, which he never called Sun Studio when he was there. It was always called Memphis Recording Service. And eventually Sun Records was housed in there. So that when it became a tourist deal. They named it Sun Studio, which it was a good thing to do because it was a much more recognizable thing. But anyway, he was working 20 hours a day. You go to work at the radio station at 7 o'clock in the morning, get off at 3:30, then come to the studio and work till no telling when. And when he first started, he was recording weddings and funerals, bar mitzvahs. He'd hide his microphones in the flowers, so they couldn't be seen. And I mean, this guy was really passionate about anything he wanted to do. So he comes home one night and says, he gathered us all around. He said, "Look," he said, I'm just working too long and I'm wore out. He said, "I've got to let one of these things go." And you would think he would say he was going to let the studio go. It was not paying him anything. He said, "I'm going to let the radio job go and I'm going to concentrate on the studio." So he let his paying job go, which took a lot of, I'll say cojones. I don't know what to say anymore, but, and my mother said, "You know what, whatever you want to do, we'll support you with just whatever you want. That's how much we believe in you." So I've always said my mother doesn't get enough credit for rock and roll music, because she could have said, "Are you kidding? We've got 2 kids here that you're going to quit your paying job, And my mother didn't have a job at that point. We were living in a duplex on Benton Avenue in Memphis, Tennessee. But yeah, I think if you look at some really successful people, a lot of them have a really strong woman behind them that's giving them support that they need. We're pretty weak creatures, you know what I mean? We can fight and all that stuff, but emotionally we're just kind of screwed up.
Well, since you brought it up, you mentioned strong women. One of the strongest women I've ever met in my entire life is sitting on my left. All right? She's one of my dearest friends in the world, not just my boss. Like when my kids were in school, she was my emergency contact. That's how much I trust this woman. And I've watched you grow into your family story. From your earliest days, sit behind the reception desk at Big River, all the way up to where you're sitting now as vice president, officially my boss. You know so much about your grandfather. I know you and your grandfather talked a lot about business, about the industry, and about just what the right things are to do. What would you say were some of Sam's most impressive, progressive business practices, and what of those do you want to translate into how you run your business, Big River Broadcasting, and the family businesses in Memphis?
That's great, and thank you for that. That was very sweet of you to say all that. I think, well, first of all, my grandfather, the biggest thing that I think he taught me, and my grandmother as well, is just the value of human worth, right? Like all people, okay? And authenticity and being who you are, and how that translates to music. And when you're creating music and trying to build that connection with other people, that's a foundation that not a lot of people start with, I will say. Some people are super technical or are reading music, but it's the humanness of music and the power that it has to transcend is really what my grandfather and my grandmother taught me, that I feel like translates into everything that we do, whether we're running a radio station and how we see and treat our people, or if we're going into a recording session and the psychology in the room and the energy that is transferred in there. I think that's a really important life lesson that I learned, that he learned through hardships in his life, growing up as a poor child right here in Florence, Alabama, and being a witness to people's lives who faced a lot of hardship. And without that foundation, I think I would look at everything that I do differently. But a lot of things are coming full circle again, and carrying that into how I record music or how I, seek people to work with. It's a huge part of it for me, and when I'm stepping into a space and carrying that foundation with me.
All right. Dale, here's a question I want both of you to kind of weigh in on. I just want your honest thoughts on this. And I thought about this. Usually when you hear in music, there's a sound. A place has a sound. Like there's an LA sound, there's a Nashville sound, right? There's a Motown sound. Sun Records was a sound in and of itself. We're not talking about a geographic area. There wasn't the Memphis sound, it was the Sun Records sound. In your opinion, what is the Sun Records sound? Can you define that?
Well, yeah, sort of. He had a 6-input used RCA radio console that he knew how to operate because he'd been in radio. And he invented slapback echo, which is, takes two tape machines, you record one, and you run them both at the same time. One's in record, one's in playback, and it gives that like the Elvis records. But, and you know, one of the great things, it was a very small building that he was in, and you know, in my opinion, what's missing today is what they did then. Is everybody got in the room together and played at one time. There was, the state of the art was one track called mono, and there wasn't any going back and overdubbing, you know, if you made a mistake or anything like that. And I think the Sun record, the Sun Studios, the Memphis Recording Service sound was a man with passion that was really hunting for something different, and he wanted to. I don't know that he knew exactly what he was looking for until he heard it, and when he heard it, he knew he had it, and it broke down racial barriers for sure in the world, in Memphis, Tennessee, and in the world. And I think that he wanted to be a criminal defense attorney, but and he'd have been a great one, man, you know. But he would have. When I got my first tattoo, he said, "Jerry, if you want to be a freak, why don't you just cut your arm off?" You know what I mean? Okay, I get it, Dad, you know. It's the truth, man. He didn't look at things the same as everybody else did, but, you know, really, I think, you know, people going there, and that's still going to the Sun Studio today, we don't own it. He never owned it. He rented that building always, but they think because they're in there that some kind of magic thing's gonna happen, you know? It just doesn't happen that way, you know? You gotta be able to play and sing, and you don't. He was always looking for perfect imperfection, so he didn't want anything perfect, you know, because he thought it was just not the right thing to be, any kind of perfection, you know. And so I think it was the passion of the man. I think it was there was no EQ. If you wanted to change the sound on, say, Johnny Cash's guitar, you'd have to move it 1 inch up the neck, you know, or 1 inch back to change the sound. So it was a lot of stuff going on that this not going on today, which it's a lot better today, but you know, he just had to, he created that Sun sound, you know, but not everybody got it when they came in there, you know. If you weren't very good, you just weren't very good.
Well, now, Halley, I want your thoughts, because you, like your grandfather, you are also a music producer, so you have an ear. What, in your opinion, is the Sun sound? What does that mean to you?
Well, back then, you know, I think it was kind of a fortunate thing that maybe people didn't realize at the time, that they really didn't have the choice to go in and record with the mindset of I'll fix it later. And that changes your approach and your time in there from start to finish. But, you know, I think what really shaped the sound, and not only the Sun sound, but the Memphis sound and Muscle Shoals, these are really special places where I feel like people went to find themselves because they were free to be themselves. And that in itself shaped a sound during a very chaotic time where there was a lot of hate, and, you know, blacks and whites were not supposed to be working together, hanging together. And man, what a bridge that built when it happened. And people had the courage to allow it to happen and for that to transcend in that way through music. So, to me, that's the sound. It's just the authenticity in its extreme. There and here, Stacks, all of these wonderful places that left a mark on music history. And I try to be really aware of that with what I do, because I think that was such a universal gift, to not have all of this stuff to kind of get in our way now and to mess up the process, and to allow people who maybe shouldn't be doing music to do it.
That's honest. I don't know, I guess you know who you are if you're doing music and have no business doing it. We're right now in the middle of celebrating the W.C. Handy Music Festival in and around the Shoals. W.C. Handy was born in 1873, 50 years prior to Sam, and again, changed music forever, being the father of the blues. In celebrating W.C. Handy, one of the things that comes up is the fact that he was so determined to make it in spite of all the struggles and the obstacles in his way. If you've listened to Sam, if you ever heard Sam Phillips speak, if you ever saw any interviews with him, whether it was locally here in town or on national television, it wasn't uncommon for Sam to mention that he had obstacles. There were things that he had to overcome to achieve what he achieved. Well, Jerry, you were there for a lot of that. What would you say were some of Sam's greatest obstacles to his success early in his career, or even throughout his career, long after Elvis and Johnny and all that? What would you say were some of his greatest obstacles to success?
Well, in the beginning, you know, when he was recording Howlin' Wolf and Roscoe Gordon and Little Milton and all those people, it was a very segregated South, and he got a lot of flack for that, you know, I mean, he just did, a lot of people, but you know, he never cared what anybody said about him, he just didn't, and he was gonna do what he was gonna do no matter what, and so, you know, I think, you know, we're so used to going to a recording studio. And look, there's some musicians in here. I see Travis Womack, I see Will McFarland back there. I don't want to start pointing names up because I'll miss somebody. But I think, you know, people go in now with a mentality of, I know I'm got off the subject, but, you know, it's just kind of a technical development of Pro Tools, and let's just play. If we don't like this, we'll go back and fix it or whatever. And I think a lot of that's missing in music today, that just, look, we gotta get it, you know, whatever. But I think the obstacles he had to overcome, number one, he had a family, he wasn't making any money, and he was working his ass off, and he had 2 nervous breakdowns during this period of time, and he went through 2 sets of electroshock treatments.
Wow.
And that was when nobody really knew those things were gonna work, you know? It was experimental kind of, but, I mean, I think it worked on him. I mean, I don't know if it made him crazier than he was, but he, you know, man, if you were gonna have anybody on your team, Sam Phillips would be the guy you'd want. He'd outwork you out, think you know everything. He just would do it, and he had passion for what he was doing, and then when it comes to the music, I know I'm off the subject, Fletch, but I'm a child of the '60s, so I don't have much memory, you know. But he just he was passionate, and he wanted, you know, he wanted something really great. He wanted to do something really great. I don't know if he knew what was great or not, but his main ingredient on everything was feel. Feel, and he told me one time, he said, Jerry, you can go out in the middle of the jungle, find a hollow stump, put a dried animal skin over it, and tighten it down real tight and make kind of a drum there, you know. And put somebody with some rhythm, give them some sticks, and let them start beating on that with rhythm. Now, it's got to have rhythm and feel. You got music. That's the genesis of music right there. Because you could dance to that, you could sing to it, you could play to it. I mean, it was just one thing, but it's the rhythm that moves. We all have hearts in our body that are beating right now at a certain rhythm. So I just think he was, you know, he was searching. He called his studio a laboratory, like, and I came up with a thing like, when you're in the studio, it's like building a Frankenstein. You know, you work and you work, and it's not walking, it's not doing anything, it's not living, it's not. Then all of a sudden, this thing starts walking, you know, and you can't stop it. You know, this music, this great thing called music, you can't stop it once you got it, you know. And so, I think the people that he recorded, they all started walking, and they're still walking today, even though they're dead.
Oh, I agree.
You know what I mean?
Well, Halley, to sort of appendix to that question, do you think, as someone who is working and producing music today, do you think Sam could do today what he did in the 1950s? And if Sam were here now and just starting, could he do it? And what do you think his greatest obstacles would be right now? And I'm just going to pick up my water.
That's a good question.
It's a great question.
You would think we would talk about
I
questions.
thought about that
before we
question on
come
the
up.
drive over here.
That's I mean, yeah, I have a lot of respect for my grandfather. I do think wherever he landed, he would have, you know, figured it out. But it's almost like, you know, history kind of repeats itself a little bit. And even though we have much more technology today, I still feel like what he did applies to today with connecting people, with bringing people together, with being authentic when it comes to music, even with things that we're facing like AI technology and all of that. You know, you really are cutting yourself short. And the people who have the heart and the gift to create music aren't always the ones stepping into that space. And, you know, it's become kind of a crazy climate again, sadly to say. And I still feel like music is the ultimate healer and connector of all of that. And so I hope I can carry some of who he was and what he taught me into that space now too, but certainly I believe that he would as well. I will always believe that music is the ultimate connector to get us through whatever hardships.
Do you ever, as a woman producing, do you ever feel like being a woman is an obstacle in any room for you as a music producer?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
And you take inspiration from your grandfather, and you're just looking at, as if you think of your grandfather as like the source of strength for you to get over that hurdle, that obstacle, what is going through your mind when you encounter those obstacles?
Like just
Yeah, like when you're confronted with, this is happening to me because I'm a woman, this is a barrier because I'm a woman, and you channel your grandfather's spirit or what have you, what exactly is your mind process? What goes through your
sometimes
head?
I'm honestly thinking, shit, he was probably saying the same things to people that I'm getting said to me right now, and it's a little tough, you know. I mean, you know, it's tough. It's tough being a woman. It's tough to get the credit you deserve. It's tough to get over, you know, oh, hey, baby, you know, in here, like that's going to be the thing when we're here to work. It's a hard thing to get over and to earn respect, and my grandmother faced that as well. You know, she was a very progressive woman. She was part of the first all-girl radio station in the nation, WHER Radio, 1,000 Beautiful Watts, that my grandfather actually started in October of 1955. But even women in those roles, right, they weren't taken seriously. They were kind of the last ones for a while to get the phone calls for news reports and things like that because, you know, women just weren't it. And that has carried on through the years. I'm not going to say that it hasn't got better. It kind of depends on where you are.
Would you say that if you encounter someone in your career now working as a record producer, if somebody underestimates you because you're a woman, does that fuel you? Or does it make you angry? Or how do you feel when you encounter, how do you process that?
Well, it makes me angry. For a long time, it really intimidated me, to be honest. I've kind of gotten over that a little bit as I've gotten older. Because, you know, you want to make everybody happy. There's a lot of psychology in the recording space, right? So sometimes, especially as a woman, you just kind of take it on the chin and, you know, move past it and be unbothered and go home and let it bother you at home unless it's something super severe. But yeah, I mean, it's psychological. It bothers you. It bothers you on the front end for someone to take that approach with you. But you just have to buck up and do what you do.
Absolutely. All right, now, Jerry.
Let me add a little something.
Okay, go
Not
for
to
it.
that, but this is a funny story.
He's her dad.
Now, this is another one of my stupid ass things. But my mother got real sick, and then she got dementia, you know, and so I'm there talking to her, and she goes, "Oh, your daddy, he was something else." He said, "He used to take me out to the transmitter's house behind the radio station." I was going, "Okay, Mother, I think that's
Yeah,
I'm okay with that."
That story can stop right there.
He was, he romantic. I said, "I don't think I want to hear that. I don't think I want to hear that." I know it's off that subject.
Where did that come from?
Yeah, I mean, it just,
There's a transmitter house out behind every radio station.
there is.
In fact, I've thought about it a couple of times.
I didn't want to know that. Now I know that. Now that's in my head.
Where's Jerry? He's in the transmitter.
All right. When I started at Big River in 1997, one of my most vivid memories was on Kix 96 on the radio station that I now program. There was a program that ran, and it was you out of Nashville. It was Power Diamond.
Yeah.
That was your production company, right?
Yeah.
You were record producing in Nashville. You were following. You and your brother Knox both were following in your father's footsteps. So my question for you is, growing up with Sam and around Sam and Elvis and Johnny and Jerry Lewis and all of these icons that your father was responsible for introducing to the world, did Sam actively mentor you in the industry and in music and songwriting and production, Or was it more of like you and Knox were just sort of learning by observation?
Well, the first thing we started off doing when we were younger, I mean, probably, I don't know, I was probably 16 or something. Well, I was playing in the band then. But anyway, our first job was to keep the tape log for him while he was recording. In other words, they'd let the tape continue to roll, and if it was a false start, you put false start, number one false start, so you got to where the fifth take was the take, he said, this is it, or whatever. So we would take, that's how we started learning, and observing, you know, what he was doing on the console and everything. And then he encouraged us to get a band or something and start working with them, you know, and learning the ropes of the engineering aspect of everything. But, you know, he always said, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get something with feel to it, you know. Just, that was pretty much his bottom line on everything. And I think if you listen to everything he ever cut, you'll know that it's got lots of feel on it. I mean, you can't help but notice that it has so much feel. And that's, you know, I know I'm kind of going back, but that's an overlooked thing in my opinion these days, that people aren't really, and I think a lot of it has to do with their, you know, you go in, you cut the track, and you come back and you overdub the vocal, and you come back and you overdub the strings and the voices and everything, you know. But, you know, like, for example, I'm not saying it was right, but when I cut my album, the players wanted demos, and I said, man, and Halley did too, said, we don't want you to be rehearsed when you get in here. We don't want you to know what your lead guitar break's gonna sound like. We don't want you to have played it and worked it up, because it kind of puts them out on a limb, and it really tests their ability to play if they can come up with something on the spot like that, you know. And so I sang it all live with the band. I became a part of the band. And if it's any good at all, I don't think it would be as good if I'd have just put a rough scratch, they call scratch vocal down, and then went back later and sang with the track. Because I was talking to the band a lot of the time when I was in there, and I became a part of the band. I'm not going to talk about my album that much, but I'm just saying we've gotten so far away from, you know, I mean, today you can take 6 guitar breaks and then pick a good part of this one, a good part of this one, a good part, make one perfect guitar break, you know what I mean? And hell, it just ain't real, you know what I mean? It's kind of phony in a way. I mean, we got guitarists like Travis, like Will in here. I know there's other ones here that know what I'm talking about. They know how to do it, and they'll help you on a session if you're in a session. There's no doubt about it. They'll help you, and it's that kind of players that make music. And you know, somebody asked Dan Penn. Everybody knew who Dan Penn is. He said, Dan, what's the secret of the Memphis sound? He said, well, we just don't let nobody tell us what to do. That was a great answer, man. That was a great answer. And I think that is what Memphis music is about. And Muscle Shoals too. I mean, you know, these are sister cities, Memphis and Muscle Shoals. They're sister cities, and they're, you know, this whole Muscle Shoals thing is built on feel. I mean, if you start listening to it and looking at it for what it really is, I don't give a shit what the lyrics are saying if the feel ain't there. You know what I mean? I just don't care. I know there's poets and all that stuff, but I just don't think if it hasn't got feel, I'm just not interested in it, you know?
Well, okay, as a producer, and you still do some producing, right?
Some.
Yeah, some. As a producer, over your long career, was there any specific Sam Phillips techniques that you learned and loved and said, I'm gonna do that myself? Was there anything specific that your dad did that you said, I'm gonna do that too?
Well, not necessarily, but I'll give you an example. When we were cutting John Prine's Pink Cadillac album, the state of the art was 16 track, and then you would mix down to a 2 track for the master. Well, my brother and I said, let's ask Sam to come in here and cut a couple of cuts on John. So Knox called Sam up and said, hey, you gotta come down here. This guy's the worst singer you ever heard in your life. And it was a compliment, you know, to Sam, because he goes, all right, I'll be down there. And he came down there, but he could have cared less about the 16 track. He was mixing to the 2 track, and that was it. I mean, no more overdubbing, no more nothing. That was what he was doing, and they were the 2 best records on the album. I mean, I'm just telling you. I mean, I hate to admit that, really, but it's the truth, you know, because there was a master a master of psychology, a master of recording, a master of mixing, a master of sound, and he, you know, he'd already been the most famous record producer in the world because he'd had Howlin' Wolf, Little Milton, you know, Elvis, Johnny Cash, Jerry Lewis, Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison, Charlie Rich. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And none of those people sounded like each other. And when he cut Elvis, you know, he could have been looking for another Frank Sinatra, you know. He didn't care. I mean, he'll tell you Frank Sinatra was great, but that's not what he wanted. Has y'all ever heard Tutti Frutti by Pat Boone? Yeah. Tutti Frutti.
I mean, I've heard Pat Boone sing heavy metal songs, so.
I mean, I love, Pat Boone's great. I don't have anything against him, but man, that was, you talk about taking a Little Richard song and running it. And Travis knows about that. He played with Little Richard, and, you know. Hey,
All right.
I need some electroshock treatments myself, probably.
I work with him. He said it. Most famous record producer in the world, your grandfather. Sam Phillips is one of the most widely known names in all of music for decades. So my question to you is, now he obviously grew up in it at the time. You came after. I mean, you knew your grandfather. He was alive when you were born. But at what age did you realize your grandfather was who he was? And what was the impact of that on you?
Gosh, I mean, I knew our family was a little different, you know. You know, when I was old enough to kind of start hanging out with friends and stuff, you know, our living room and just day-to-day life was not like everyone else's. You know, we had jam sessions in the living room, and I would spend time down at the recording studio, and in fact, it was even a smell, you know, like there was a smell in there that would get on you and in your hair, and, you know, like nobody else had that going on, you know, it was different. But, you know, he was just grandpa to me for the longest time. I mean, to be completely honest, I was a teenager when he died. I really think the magnitude set in for me at his funeral. Just the people and the stories and the respect. Not that I didn't know or realize, but I was just too close to the subject, I guess. You know, he was a grandpa, you know, just grandpa, but grandpa was a big deal. And I so wish that I had been a little bit older before he had passed away, because now, like especially now, there's so many questions that I have. You know, technical questions and advice that I would seek from him that I just didn't know, you know, to ask at the time. But I feel like that was probably a turning point mark for me. And actually that's when, right after that is when I left Memphis and came to work in radio here, because I was born in Memphis. Right after he passed, I wanted to kind of figure out what radio was all about and how music worked in conjunction with radio. And so I left Memphis as a young teenage mom and came to the Shoals and started answering telephones and worked my way through. And so I'd say that was probably a big significant turning point for me, and I've been trying to learn as much as I can.
Well, as you...
Hey, could I add something here?
Sure.
She went to work at Sam's house when you were 14 or 15,
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
He has his office set up over there. You were answering the phone.
Mhm.
He called one day, right?
Yeah, he would call me there, and he would call me at the radio station too. I mean, even when he was not well, he called me from the hospital just to see how I would answer the phone, you know. And he would let me have it, you know, just about you're the impression of the entire company when you answer that telephone, you know, and you need to sound like you're happy to be there because you're the and you know, at that time I'm like, okay, grandpa. But now today, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, could you answer the phone a little bit nicer? Can we communicate with people? I mean, my sweet little grandmother used to always say, a smile on your face puts a smile on your voice. That was kind of her thing on radio. But yeah, he would call and give me hell all the time, no matter what I was. It didn't matter if you were cleaning or answering the telephones. It had to be done the right way.
Well, it stuck with me because sometimes we've had some receptionists at the radio station that I thought didn't sound like they were nice enough, or that, you know, he said if somebody calls your business, you want to make them want to come there, you know? You don't want some rude man, woman, or who's ever answering the phone going, hello, you know, yeah, but, and that's a good lesson for everybody if you're in business, is that, you know, you just, the first contact with your business is really probably the most important one that you can have, and then if you back that up with performance that, you know, lives up to that answering the phone. That sounds simple, but it's just like the drum, you know, in the jungle. That's the basics of you know, business, you know.
Well, as a follow-up, what aspects of your grandfather's legacy do you most hope to embody as you go forward and achieve in your career?
To see people, you know, to really see them and create great music. I mean, it's what I want to do. I love it. I'm passionate about it. It's not something that I feel like I have to do. It's something that I want to do. You know, it sounds very simple, but sometimes that's what we're missing, right? I mean, I just feel like his approach to everything and to creating music is something that I hope to carry forward. And my grandmother as well. You know, I don't feel like the name Becky Phillips gets said as much as it should. But she was really not only a pioneer behind rock and roll forming, but just in her own right, as a singer, as a ukulele player, as the program director for the first all-girl radio station in the nation. Like I said, WHER, she came from right here, from Calder County, Alabama. You know, they didn't care what people thought. They did what they wanted to do. They were true to who they are, and no matter what I'm doing, I hope I'm able to stay true to that.
Absolutely. Well, I love the fact that if you've noticed over the course of this conversation, when talking about Sam, there's one theme that we keep coming back to, or at least they constantly come back to, and it's Sam's love of people and what people bring to any project, right? So since I'm gonna direct this to you first, because you are the now generation. You are working in music, in the industry now, and we know, all of us know, that as much as people have revolutionized the music industry, so has technology. Technology is constantly driving us forward and changing the way we do things. In your opinion, how do you think Sam would feel about the use of artificial intelligence in music today?
He would hate it.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, isn't it?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. You know, Sam was a really smart technical guy. When it comes to even things like Pro Tools and things like that, if there's an enhancement, that's one thing. A replacement is something totally different. He would have been all about, you know, using technology to, you know, create sound or elevate something that's going on, right? Or performance or whatever. But no, he wouldn't have been for AI. I'm not for AI. I think it cheats everybody, from the writing perspective all the way to the, you know, the recording side of things. You know, how do you stay true and how do you get better?
Good. What about you, Jerry?
Well, you know, I stumbled on AI. Well, actually, I had stumbled on it before, but I was at a meeting with the governor of Nashville with the NARIS group, and it was a signing of the law that you couldn't use AI like for somebody's voice, you know, that had a record out. You couldn't make your own record with it. So you can take one little clip of somebody's sound of their voice and you can make it sing anything you wanted to, you know. So, but that for me, I mean, it was an eye opener, you know, that you know, I mean, it's almost like, you know, you're just taking away the reality of real stuff. I mean, like right now, somebody could grab a piece of my voice and make me go out and sing Bridge Over Troubled Waters, you know what I mean? And you think, that's Jerry Phillips singing Bridge Over Troubled Waters, you wouldn't know the difference. But, no, my dad, he would have embraced all, like Halley said, all the technology, he always embraced technology. When he could get after he had a mono machine, he got a 2-track machine, and I learned on a 3-track machine, which was the state of the art. And then 8 tracks came in, and we said, what the hell are we gonna do with 8 tracks? You know about it. And then it was 16, and then it was 24, and you're going, Jesus. And then what happens at that point is, like my dad used to tell me, he said, now don't put too much on there, you know, but if you've got all these tracks, you have a tendency to want to fill them up with something, you know, which doesn't always make the music any better. You know? But Yeah, so I mean, you know, he would have embraced, like you said, he would have embraced the Pro Tools. He wouldn't have used the tuning device for anybody. Because, you know, if you can't sing, you don't need to be in there. Forget it. But some of his guys weren't the best singers in the world, and he really wasn't looking for the best singers in the world. You know, he was just looking for feel. If you had the right feel, a telephone rang in the middle of, I can't remember the name.
Jimmy DeBerry.
What was it?
It was a Jimmy DeBerry track.
Jimmy DeBerry, blah blah guy. Yeah, a phone rang in the middle of the song, and the secretary was gone, but the walls were kind of thin in this building, so you could hear this phone ringing in the song, and it was. The band wanted to cut it over again. He said, "Are you kidding me, man? We're going to take the best cut we got and throw it away because there's a damn phone ringing in the middle of it? We could never have planned that, you know what I mean?" And so, I mean, there's a lot of lessons in that, you know? I mean, most people would go, okay, phone rang, we got to do it again. And you know, it didn't matter one single bit that phone was in there. It did not matter. So yeah, man. I mean, you know, it was like, how easy was it for me to get a date and say, "Hey, y'all want to go watch movies with me and Elvis Presley all night long?" that's off the subject, but I had to say it. Elvis used to go to the Memphian Theater, rent the Memphian Theater all night long, and it was a private thing, and I could go up to any girl anywhere, it doesn't matter, unless they were pregnant or having a baby in the morning or something. I said, "Would you like to go with me to watch movies with Elvis Presley all night long?" What do you think the answer was going to be? Yes, I would, you know. So as I got a little older, things got a little easier, and I know Halley still can hear me say that because she's my daughter. But yeah, I mean, look, my brother and before we get over this, I want everybody to know about my brother Knox. My brother Knox kind of kept the torch going for our family, because I never wanted to be in the shadow of Sam Phillips. I always thought, you know. I went to work for a truck line, worked for a swimming pool company, I joined the Army Reserves, I did everything I could do to not be that son taking daddy's orders, you know. But I am the prodigal son. I woke up one day going, "Man, you got a studio there, why don't you just go back, you know, and behave yourself." I'd come in at night, my brother would be studying for college, and I'd been out on my motorcycle, you know, riding. I said, "Man, you're wasting your life, you know." And I was the one wasting my life. He wasn't. But yeah, I mean, you know, I wouldn't take anything for my bringing and what happened. I learned a lot. When Elvis would come over, and I know I'm kind of repeating myself a little bit, but when Elvis would call, he couldn't get out. This was after Beth's son, he was an RCA, and he would call about 11 o'clock at night and say, "Hey," Sam would answer, my mother would answer, can we come over? And he'd always have like about 10 or 12 people with him, you know. And my parents would come back and they'd say, "Hey, boys, Elvis is coming over. Y'all want to get up and miss school tomorrow?" And I think a lot of parents would have said, "Stay in your room. Do not come out. Don't show your face," you know. But it was great, man. And I learned so much about human beings and people and all of that through those experiences. And my brother did too. But the point about my brother, I want to get this out and I'll shut up. Because, you know, you can't ever give my brother or Sam the microphone because you'll never get them to stop talking. But you know, my brother carried the torch for our family. And he got the Naris chapter in Memphis. He was a music business politician, and he was also a great record producer. He won a Grammy. And but he was always focused on, if you wanted to get a job done, you put Knox on it, it'd get done, or you put Sam on it, it'd get done. You put me on it, I don't know if it'd get done or not. But it just depends on how much tequila they had, you know. But anyway, I'm kind of making a little joke out of everything, but this music business is a serious thing, and it should be, and it's about the music, you know. It's really not about making the money, but everybody wants to make money, and it's a great thing to make some money. But I mean, you know, there's somebody, we put a great band together right here, right sitting in this audience. You can put a bunch of great songwriters, man. You know, it all begins with a song, you know, it's all there. So anyway, I'm not going to say any more, but go ahead, Fletch.
I have one last question. Then I want to open it up for anybody out here who has questions for either Jerry or Halley to ask those before we have to wrap up. And it's really kind of a philosophical question, so you both get to answer it, you know, in your own words. Do you believe, as we sit here and talk about men like Sam Phillips, men like W.C. Handy, who, well, as I said, changed music forever. They introduced the world to a genre of music they didn't invent, but they just said, hey, you all need to see this, you need to hear this, and they gave it to the world, and they made us love it, the way they worked in it. Do you think the world will ever see another Sam Phillips? Do you think the world will ever have another music revolution like Sam Phillips gave the world?
Well, I mean, personally, no, I don't believe so. But I do believe that there continues to be incredible innovators and shapers of new sounds and new feelings that we all get from music. But that's kind of a tough thing because the world has just changed so much, and we're all able to absorb so much now. When all of that was coming and happening, what radio did then for people and the music industry is very different than it is now. Everything is very fragmented, and I think it would be, tough for there to just be one person, that shifts things in the way that it took place with people like W.C. Handy and with my grandfather.
Well, Jerry, what about you? Do you think the world will ever have another music revolution like Sam?
I really don't think so. I mean, I think, music is going to continue to be great and all that, but, everybody thinks that my dad, when Elvis came to the door, everything was great, Well, he had to take Elvis on the road to 60,000 miles a year before interstates and stop at every radio station, tower he saw, and so would you play my record, And a lot of those people, when he was doing that, they wouldn't let Elvis use the bathroom. They thought he was a greasy guy that liked that other kind of music,
Mm-hmm.
And so he had to work hard, and he was just about bankrupt when he heard that Colonel Tom Parker was out there. He called it peddling his contract, but it meant he was trying to sell it, but it wasn't for sale. So he called Tom Parker and said, look, you quit it. Stop doing this shit, man. You can't be doing this. He's my artist. He's not for sale. He's just not for sale. So they hung up, and about a week later, Tom Parker calls back. He says, well, look, if you were going to sell him, what would you sell him for? He said, and at that time, I think $20,000 was the most anybody ever been sold for. He said, $35,000 and the 5 that I owe Elvis, which is 1954, a lot of money. He didn't think there was any way they were going to take it, so Colonel said, okay, I'll talk to some people. Anyway, they took the deal, They took the deal. RCA took the deal. And that money gave my dad able to pay his bills off. And the next person through the door was Carl Perkins with blue suede shoes, okay? Now, the very next one. And then the next one was Johnny Cash. And then the next one was Jerry Lee Lewis, And then Roy Orbison and Charlie Rich. So, I mean, it gave him and Elvis, they talked about that sale before they sold because, everybody, Sam knew that RCA could probably do a better job for Elvis than he could do because he didn't have the money to do it. But, they remained friends throughout the whole time. And but no, I don't think there'll ever be another Sam Phillips or Jerry Wexler or there's some other ones.
Rick Hall.
Rick Hall. I mean, we can't leave Rick out of this thing, Rick, I mean, what a trip he is, I mean, I love him to death, man. I mean, and him and my dad were cut from the same cloth, I mean, they were like, if you ain't playing no good, your ass is out of here, But yeah, and Rick, my dad had opened a studio in Nashville in the '60s, and they didn't really welcome him to Nashville because they thought he was going to be this rebel guy that was going to have all these scab sessions and stuff. He built a studio there, and so he told me, and Rick told me this, that when Rick was looking to go to Nashville and build a studio or have a studio or whatever, and my dad told him, don't do it. Stay where you are and do your thing, man. Do not go up there. They're not going to understand you, just like they're not going to understand me. Sam eventually closed the studio there, sold it to Billy Sherrill, I think, or whatever. But that was one of the places that he cut some good records on the Everly Brothers and stuff like that. But that was one place that they weren't going to allow him to survive. They didn't he was too much of a rebel for him, you know. And so, you know, Elvis, they pretty much booed him off the Grand Ole Opry, and then he went to Louisiana Hayride, and he had a regular show down there once a week. So, but anyway, I know I got off the subject, but you know, I tell people when I'm talking about this music thing and my father and all this stuff, you just can't sum it up. I mean, it's just too many moving parts. But the answer is no. I don't think so.
All right. Well, those are all of my questions. I hope I left enough time for any of you. Hopefully our conversation inspired some thoughts. If you've got any questions, please raise your hand and we'll see if we can get your closest. So we can.
I was wondering what ties Alan Lomax had to Sam Phillips through the Delta area in his recordings.
Well, he was a little before Sam, you know, Alan was, with his field recordings you're talking about. Yeah. You know, I don't know if they even knew each other. I'm sure they knew about each other, but I mean, that was just a guy that I think was, I'm not an expert on Alan Lomax, but I think he was trying to capture the rawness of the performers, you know what I mean, taking his stuff to their houses and say, play for me. And one of the things my dad would say to his black artists was, don't play for me like you think, play something you think I want to hear what you want to do, you know? Yeah. So yeah, to answer your question, I don't know much about Alan. I know what he did, but I don't know if they were friends or not.
Forgive me, but I was wondering what your father thought about Howlin' Wolf and Elvis Presley going to the top. That's often talked about, but what would you say about it?
The question was, what did my dad think about Howlin' Wolf and Elvis Presley going to the top? But my dad thought Howlin' Wolf was where the soul of man never dies. That was his favorite artist that he ever worked with. And then his second favorite was Charlie Rich, and there's a stretch there. But both of those guys had feel. Everything they did was had feel. And Howlin' Wolf told me later on, he says, I was the onlyest one who left Memphis in a Cadillac, went to Chicago. Onlyest one.
Onlyest one.
And but Sam loved it. And I've got a tattoo of Howlin' Wolf on my arm here, believe it or not. But yeah, he was my favorite artist too. If you guys had never heard Howlin' Wolf music, do yourself a favor and go listen to it. You know.
Is there a question?
The blue Cadillac. My dad had a '60 Cadillac convertible when he was made. It was 1960, so this was after Elvis and Jerry Lee. He had plenty of money. He bought two Cadillacs, one baby blue convertible and an Eldorado, same year, '60s. Right now, it's at Graceland on display out there, and Halley's working right now on Sam Phillips exhibit in Memphis, and that if that comes to being, the Cadillac will come over, and the $1 Million Quartet piano's out there. You know, the one that they played the piano with Jerry Lee, Johnny Cash, Carpenter, Roberson, and so yeah, we're working on. I'm not going to tell where it is. It's a cool location, but I better not say it yet. But right, Hallie?
Yeah, probably not yet.
She's now become my manager. I call her up and say, what do you think we ought to do? You know.
Let's get a question from Travis Womack in the back. Travis.
Jerry, could you give us a short summary of when you were a pygmy wrestler?
Big.
What is the most perfectly formed? What was it?
Travis is not the pygmy. Okay. All right, I was 13 years old, and I was winning a contest at the health club weightlifting contest, and I already had some judo. And one of my best friends at the time or my idols really, was Sputnik Monroe. 220 pounds of twisted steel with sex appeal. And he also said, I'll jump in there and shit in your hair. So he was a pretty intimidating guy. I don't profanity, I know some people may be offended, but I don't mean to. But anyway, he introduced me to this guy named Rex Morgan, Rex was a sheetrocker and a wrestler on the side. And he had a ring in his backyard, you know. And there was this midget there, a midget man, he was like 25, I was 13. And there was no other midgets for him to wrestle. So they said, would you just come over and work out with him, you know? And I said, well, yeah, I'll do that, you know, I'll go work out with him. So anyway, somebody got the bright idea that I could possibly be the world's most perfectly formed midget wrestler. Not midget, but wrestler. You had to kind of look in that a little bit to get that straight. So we started working out and all that together, and I wrestled in Mark Tree, Arkansas, Jackson, Mississippi, and all this. But the people hated me because they knew I wasn't a midget. You know, they knew it. But Sputnik Monroe told me, he says, look, he said, put some Coke tops in your trunk. He says, and when y'all get out fighting under the ring, he said, just scrape their head with it, because the capillaries up here are real close to the skin, and they'll just instantly start bleeding, you know. And so I did that a few times, you know, and but I mean, you know, at that time, Fletcher was it was in a Quonset hut. Okay, the black people were on one side, the white people were on the other side, and there was a bar at each end of the thing. You think that's not setting something up to happen? You know what I mean? And actually, and there was a white guy came out of the audience and tried to stab me. He tried to kill me, and they didn't have cops there at these things. It was bouncers. These guys got a hold of this guy, and last I saw him, honestly, his head was hanging out of his car, his tongue was out, and he was just bleeding. You know what I mean? He wasn't dead, but I bet he wished he had not tried to stab me. You know. So anyway, that's another thing that maybe I need some more electric shock treatment. But anyway, hey, you know, it was true show business. That was true show business, man. True show business. And it was rough. It was tough. I mean, you had to be tough to wrestle. These days, I mean, you still have to be tough, but you know, back in those days, you really couldn't hardly tell. We all knew how to throw punches that looked real. We all knew how to land. We all knew how to do all that kind of stuff. And they do today too. Don't ever mess with a wrestler. Any description, they'll screw you up bad.
All right, one more. I think Grant had one. Grant.
You guys obviously working through decades and legacy, you recording, studio production, and owning radio stations. How do you, I guess this is a question for both of you, how do you see, we're working in both sides from essentially the creation and the release to the public, how do you see that those inform each other?
You want to go first? Or me go first?
Sure. It's a very complicated world right now between music and radio and streaming and, you know, I watched the transition of where laws would change for how many radio stations one entity could own, right? Because you didn't used to be able to own tons and tons of stations all over the US like you got today with Clear Channel and entities like that. So back then when people were going out and really working records to radio and they started charting, that was really influencing audiences that these stations really had a close connection to all over the country. It wasn't like, you know, they're in bed with record labels and they start playing it on one of their hundreds of stations and all of a sudden music is charting, right? So the influence there has changed a lot. You know, I sit in a weird position because we've got publishing companies, radio stations, and a recording studio, and there's a lot that isn't fair. You know, there really isn't when it comes to how people are compensated, but there's arguments on both sides, and you know, somebody is gonna have to, there's gonna have to be a committee in the middle that really comes together to find a solution to where people understand the validity of what radio still has to offer and the influence that it has and the jobs that it provides and all of the above, because it wouldn't be good for anybody to go to talk radio. But also from a compensation model, it's just, you know, for artists to be getting nothing off of radio airplay, and believe me, the people at the NAB and stuff, they don't want to give me the microphone about that, right? Because it's two opposing sides. But you know, I think it's really difficult. Streaming has made that certainly difficult. Our publishing companies, the micro pennies and stuff that we have to add up, you know, to pay writers is really kind of a joke. So it's a tough landscape. It's a tough landscape right now and how they all work together because there's so many mediums. It's not just a one-stop shop with radio pushing things out anymore. You know, I don't know if that answers your question at all, Grant. Does that hit anything that you meant by that question?
I know it's not a short answer, and I didn't expect it to be, but do you find yourself making production decisions knowing what you know about radio or
Yeah, well,
things like that?
it kind of depends on what kind of music I'm working on, to be honest. I mean, I still, really, when it comes to radio, these days, the only things I really consider in the production if I'm going to pitch it to radio is with country music. And I don't mean Americana, which is the kind of stuff that I would prefer to work on and land. Because there's just not a whole lot of independent operators anymore that report and really affect chart position and help artists in that way. So, for me, from a production standpoint, sorry to say this, but the radio side of it isn't a huge factor with how I approach who I'm working with and how we're going to release it these days. So.
Well, for me, I've always kind of been in both. My dad, first thing he did when he made some money was buy a radio station, because he started in radio, and radio was his first love. And so he bought radio stations, and so we in fact, his first partner was Kimmons Wilson, who built all the Holiday Inns, and then he bought Kimmons out, and that was WHER. But for me, it's always been both those elements have always been there, the radio and the music, and it was, there was a time when, radio was the thing that, that propelled, I mean, the whole payola scandal, where, record companies were paying jocks to play their record and all that. It was illegal. A lot of people went to jail over it, but yeah, I just think that, the two go together. It's so fragmented now. I mean, I don't think it was you, I forget who it was I called up. I said, are you getting very many, and you can answer this question, are you getting very many phone calls? And he said, well, we're getting more text now than phone calls.
Talking about on the air?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we get far more texts than we do phone calls.
So used to, you'd call up a jock and go, hey man, could you play Howlin' Wolf or whatever it might be, and he'd talk to you for a minute, and you get a little relationship going with that person, and they'd be a fan, but you can't really talk to anybody anymore because nobody wants to pick up the phone. It takes too much time. It's not TikTok, you can't, but yeah, I mean, I know I probably didn't answer your question, but.
Well, and I mean, I think humans are really missing from that too. I mean, that was always a beautiful thing about radio as well. It is the human connection that you have with your community, the ability that you have to influence them through music. And I'm proud to say that we've always been that way. We play independent music. We still believe in introducing people to new music and breaking records. But, with syndication and with streaming and all of this that is broken in, you just don't have a lot of those human beings anymore that are sitting there listening through to entire albums and picking things because it's their passion, it's what they know, it's what they love, and they're releasing it to people that they trust in their community, and it sets that fire and it starts taking off. Right now it's like computers think they know everything, and and I know sometimes streaming will play something for me, and I'm like, yeah, I do like that. Like, it starts picking up on your behavior and music that you like, but it's just not the same thing. And it's really a detriment to people as a community, the music business as a whole, for us not to operate in that way really anymore. It's just not very many of us left. It's difficult to do. But I think with radio and music and all that, it's always the person that's missing. It's people. You can't beat a human being no matter what you're doing. I don't care. I don't care how much thought you've put into it. I don't care what the robot sounds answering the phone or following you around on the internet. There is just something about a human being, what we house inside of us and what we have to translate to one another. And I hope we can have enough people stand up and try to get us back to that, and people who hold on. We're holding on. We're trying to hold on in the radio world to be people that still employ live local people on the air and to still play independent music. But the less and less that happens, the harder it becomes, because people want things quicker, easier, and they want to be able to do it cheaper. And man, does it cost us a whole lot.
I got one more thing to say. I'm through. I just want to let you know, Christine Oman's in the audience. Y'all know Christine? She comes down here every year and plays a bunch of gigs, and you live a long way away, right?
That's right.
Yeah, so we appreciate you coming, and you're a true believer in this area, and I think you inspire everybody. So anyway, I just
When you
didn't.
played one of my records, I couldn't believe you played it, and you still play it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you guys are just, I'll say it, you guys are the shit.
I'll take that. From Christine Ullman, I'll take that.
Love makes you do stupid things, right? And it does.
She has stood on the stage in 30 Rockefeller Plaza. I will take that from her. I will absolutely take that any day of the week. Thank you all. Thanks to the Counts brothers for letting us do this. Thanks to the Counts family. We love you guys. We all do fucking appreciate it. Remember the moral of today's story? Support local radio. We love you. Thank you. Enjoy Handy Week.